ignorant answer. You solemnly swear that the testimony you shall give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can you state and spell your name for the record?
Isaac Babinski, B-A-B-I-N-S-K-I.
Are you employed?
I'm a patrol officer with the Saginaw Police Department.
How long have you been with the Saginaw Police Department?
I believe I'm on year 8 now.
And at the time of this case, July 14, 2020, were you still working at the Saginaw Police Department?
Yes, sir.
And you were on duty on that date?
I was, yes.
About 3:30 in the morning, were you on duty?
I work 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., so yes.
And at that time and date, were you called to an area of Birch Park Apartments in the city of Saginaw?
Yes, I was.
That's located in Saginaw County, state of Michigan.
Yes, it is.
Have you ever been called to Birch Park Apartments in the past?
It's one of our most popular calls, yes.
Why is that?
It's a high crime area. There's a lot of guns. One of the most common calls there is shots fired. People calling, people shooting in the complex.
On this particular occasion, on July 14, 2020 at 3:30 in the morning, why were you called to the Birch Park Apartments?
I think it was a female caller, but it was a caller stated that there were several females and males, and they had guns.
Okay. And how long did you, oh, strike that. Were you informed of a specific address in that apartment complex to go to?
14 months later, I don't recall.
And you went to the Birch Park Apartments?
I did, yes.
And anyone go with you if you recall?
I believe the state police were sort of heading it up, and I was more of a backup role. If I recall right, they parked on Roberson. There's a hole in the fence where you can get in from the east side of Birch Park, kind of come in undercover, because if you come in from the front, the only way in is the gate, and they all know to look for the gate. And then as soon as they see you, then all the guns are gone.
Okay. So where were you positioned when you went to the Birch Park Apartments?
I came in through the front gate in my patrol car.
Okay. And before that, did you position somewhere else?
I know we have a few staging spots. I can't recall if it was the store across the street or if it was the church down by Ray.
Okay. How did you know to, well, let me rephrase that. Were you directed to come into the apartment complex at a specific time?
I believe the state police came in on foot, and then once they gave the signal, then we came in on our patrol cars.
Okay. How did you receive that signal, if you remember?
Over the radio.
Okay. And you did receive that signal?
Yes.
And then what did you do after that?
I was not actually driving. I believe I had a recruit with me that was driving, so I would have been in the passenger seat. We came in, we pulled to the left, to the west. There's a west side and an east side in the apartments. They're identical, but separate. And pulled in, and I saw the group of people near an SUV. And I saw the troopers coming in on them. We stopped the car and exited.
Okay. When you exited the car, what did you see?
I always look for the one that's leaving. And I saw a male that was leaving the area of the group. But when I got there, he wasn't necessarily with the group. I think he had a red coat on and he was carrying a bag. And I stopped him, detained him, brought him back. That's what I did then.
And do you see any other individuals standing around that SUV?
I saw at least 2 males, a female in the SUV, and then I believe there were a couple other females around it.
Okay.
To the east side of it.
All right. And did you see Arthur Woods at that time?
I saw Arthur Woods, yes.
Is he here in the courtroom today?
Yes, he is. He's seated at the defense table with a gray suit on.
We ask for identification, Your Honor.
Records reflect the identification of the defendant.
And actually going back to the SUV for a minute, where was it parked?
It was on the northwest side of the park, probably towards the middle of the parking row, and it was backed in.
You said it was backed in?
Yes.
Okay. And so,
Which is not uncommon in Birch Park.
so where was Arthur Woods in relation to the SUV when you arrived?
When I arrived, I'm not sure. I do know when I first saw him, he was near the rear passenger's side next to a trooper.
Okay. Was he free at that time or in custody?
I believe he was free at that time.
Do you know if he was in the process, or do you know if he was being taken into custody when you approached, or?
I don't think so. I believe he was just being separated and probably going to be checked for weapons.
Okay. So what did you do after that?
I began looking around and I observed a handgun on the rear passenger tire of the SUV in question.
Okay. What kind of handgun was it?
It was a small revolver. I don't know the make and model.
Okay. How was it positioned on that tire?
It was set, the handle was facing outward towards where the hubcap would be. So it would be as if somebody had set it down there that was holding it.
And when you saw that revolver, what if anything did you do?
I stated that I either said that there was a 10 or a gun. 10 means gun
Okay.
to the other troopers on scene.
All right. Now, sitting on that, in front of you is a box marked Exhibit 14. Could you just open that and tell me what's in it?
That looks like the handgun that I saw. It's a small black revolver
All right.
and some ammunition.
Did you make contact with Arthur Woods at all?
I don't recall if I did.
One second. No other questions, Sharon.
All right, questions, Ms. Ansky?
Yes, briefly. Officer Babinski, when you walked up, you walked in from the passenger side of the car, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you said I'm sorry, and you said that you drove, correct?
No, I believe my recruit was driving.
Okay,
It'd
but
be
you
hard to
didn't,
drive from the passenger seat.
you're right, but I mean, you were driven there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you didn't come on foot like the troopers did.
No, ma'am.
Okay, and when you got there, everyone was already detained, correct?
We were making contact at that time. They were waiting for us to pull in and then we simultaneously made contact.
Okay, and did you have body cam on when you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and just to clarify, the body cam is marked as, I think, an Englehart. Would that still be you?
That was
Jonathan
me, yes.
Englehart?
I don't
Okay.
know. Sometimes when they get checked out, they might not get switched over. I
Okay,
don't actually log them in, but that was definitely gonna be me.
okay, I just wanted to double check before I played it for the jury. I believed it was you, but just want to double check. If you can just give us 1 second.
Officer Engelhardt does not work night shift with me. so
Okay. Sounds like an honest mistake.
And before you begin, how long is the footage you intend to show?
Less than 4 minutes. Dominic, can you pause it? This is your body cam, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And right now we're looking at Kendrell Buford.
I can't say that I can identify him. I know that's Officer Pat Miller behind him.
It's Officer Miller behind him. Okay. And did you see, I know it was pretty fast, so we can go back if you need to. Did you see the beginning? Did you see Mr. Woods when you walked up on this, from this camera?
I believe it was to the left in a blue hoodie.
Okay, and at that time, was he in handcuffs?
If you could replay it, but I don't believe so.
Dominic, do you mind going back just a little bit? Go back a little bit more. Oh, there we go. Can you see that?
No, ma'am, I cannot.
Okay,
Oh, I see. I can't make out where his hands are. It looks like he's maybe getting checked by Officer Kemmer.
would you say this is him over here in the blue hoodie?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you saying that that's Officer Kimmer?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and do you see that Arthur's hands are behind his back?
That's generally how we search individuals. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and, okay, you can keep playing it, Dominic. Dominic, can you pause it? So Officer Babinski, so you were the one who spotted the weapon, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and did you know when you came up, you didn't know you were gonna spy, that's what you saw when you came up? You just saw the weapon when you came up, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Dominic, you can keep playing. Dominic, can you, about how many people would you say are standing there?
Are you talking about that particular screenshot?
Yes,
It looks like my recruit in the background.
okay,
Then I see maybe a female in red, a female in a tank top, and then one other male.
okay. Did you interview any of those people?
I don't recall, ma'am.
Okay, Dominic, can you keep playing?
You got something, man? Just like any? Okay.
Just occurs, I have a big point. The meters that are current call comments for your work also there, highly impact. She's about walking, all that, when she finds her big spot, so stop walking. I'm the entry person.
Can you pause it, Dominic? So, in this video, as you can see, Arthur made a statement to you, correct? Do you remember from that night that Arthur made a statement to you?
I do not, ma'am.
Okay, did you just hear the video that we just watched?
Yes, I was assuming he was talking to another officer.
Okay, did you ask Arthur any questions that night?
I may have, I don't know.
Okay, and, were you involved in taking any other pictures, or what was your job there when you arrived?
As a backup officer.
Okay,
So I don't believe I took pictures or anying like that. I don't
Okay.
believe I wrote a report either.
Okay, so there is no report for you.
I don't believe so.
So you were just there as a backup and have your body cam and make sure you got everything?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you weren't there to take any pictures or anything?
No, ma'am, it wasn't my case.
Okay, just want to double check. Okay, I don't think I have any further questions. I don't think we need to play anymore.
Anything else,
Thank you.
Mr. Majorana?
No question, Your Honor.
You may step down. Call your next witness, Mr. Majorana.
Your Honor, we would call Gary Ginther. He's outside.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Aaron. Can you state and spell your name for the record?
Gary Mark Ginther, last name spelling Ginther.
What is your occupation?
I'm a forensic scientist as a latent print examiner at the Bridgeport Crime Lab.
And how long have you held that position?
I've been doing latent fingerprints since 1986, initially as an enlisted member of the state police, retiring in the year 2000, getting hired back 19 days later, where I then went to the Northville Crime Lab, and eventually working my way back to Bridgeport. So I've been in the department for 46 years and in fingerprints for 35.
What is your educational background?
My education started at Delta College in Police Administration, Michigan State University in Criminal Justice, eventually joining the state police in 1975, graduating from their recruit school. My first post was Erie, my second post was Detroit Freeway, and my third post, eventually I made it to Bridgeport. And then during the schooling at, I took various classes in fingerprints. And of course, as a trooper in the recruit school, we learned how to do fingerprints properly. Eventually, as a trooper, you would go there, go to breaking and enterings, larcenies, things of that nature, and process for fingerprints. And then you send them to the crime lab for them to process. And so once I got over to the crime lab, I was able to learn the tricks of the trade of being a latent print examiner by other senior latent print examiners and taking various classes from various latent print examiners throughout the country.
Yeah, I believe I heard you say you had an associate's degree from Delta College. Do you have any other degrees?
Bachelor of Science from Michigan State.
And what was that major in?
It was within criminal justice.
How many latent fingerprint analysis reports have you worked on in your career?
I would say on an average, I probably completed anywhere between 400 to 550 cases a year.
Have you ever testified as an expert before?
Yes, sir, I have.
In what fields?
In the field of latent print, processing, latent print identification, and also in identifying deceased people through the use of fingerprints also.
How many times have you testified as an expert?
I would say in the neighborhood of somewhere between 250 and 300 times.
In what counties have you testified?
I have testified as a trooper in uniform and actually as a latent print examiner at Northville. So I've been testified in most of the counties between Toledo, Ohio, in Michigan, all the way as far north as East Tawas, over toward Port Huron, and most of all those counties in the federal courts in that area.
Have you testified in Saginaw County before?
Yes, sir, I have.
Do you have a curriculum vitae?
Yes, I do.
I approach witness, Your Honor.
You may.
So let the record reflect that I've handed the witness proposed exhibit number 9. Mr. Ginther, can you tell us what that is?
People's Exhibit 9 is just my curriculum vitae as far as education, my professional experience, and the training that I've had while I've been in the department.
Did you provide that to my office in anticipation of this hearing?
Yes, sir, I have.
Yeah, we move to admit exhibit number 9 at this time.
Ms. Askew,
No objections.
exhibit 9 will be admitted.
Yeah, at this time, I'd like to move to qualify Mr. Ginther as an expert in the field of fingerprint analysis.
Ms. Askew,
I don't have any objections to that.
you will be so recognized.
Now, regarding the case we're here for today, Arthur Woods, were you asked to do anything?
Yes, I was asked to process some evidence that was brought to us by the Department of State Police. Process some evidence in an attempt to find usable latent prints on that evidence.
Okay, and what was that evidence?
The evidence that I processed was a 32 S&W caliber H&R Arms Company, a 5-shot revolver. Also submitted was a 40 caliber Smith & Wesson semi-automatic pistol and the weapon magazine of that Smith & Wesson weapon.
Now, sitting in front of you, Mr. Ginther, is a box marked Exhibit 14. I'd just like you to open that and take a look at it. Tell us what's in it.
People's Exhibit 14 is the evidence that was submitted for processing. Has the lab number BP 20-2125 with my initials. Also placed on the front is the same lab number with my initials.
So that is the 32 caliber revolver that you processed.
Yes, it is.
Did you reduce your analysis to a report?
Yes, sir.
And was that report provided to Michigan State Police?
Yes, it was.
Take the approach, witness, Your Honor.
You may.
So like the record reflects that I've handed the witness what's been marked as Exhibit 10 and already stipulated to for admission by the parties. Mr. Ginther, can you tell me what I just handed you?
People's Exhibit 10 is a discovery. It contains a copy of my lab report and the processing results and the disposition of the evidence that I received.
Is that your name and signature on the last page?
Yes, it is.
And is that the same report that you authored and provided to Michigan State Police in this case?
Yes, sir.
What were the results from your report?
The results were the 6-shot revolver and the semi-automatic pistol and the weapon magazine were processed in an attempt to find latent prints on the evidence. And my results were, I did find ridge structure on all 3 items. However, there was not a sufficient number of ridge characteristics for comparison value.
So comparison value, what does that mean in layman's terms?
Well, if you were to take a look at your hand, at the top of your fingers and the palm, you'll see all these ridges here. And these ridges start to form in the early part of pregnancy, and they are distinctive and unique to you as individuals. Are certain minutia ridge detail, which include a ridge that flows upward and say it might bifurcate. So it'd be like a fork in the road. A ridge ending might just start and stop. So right when it stops is a ridge ending. Also, we have what you call enclosures where the ridge comes up, flows around in a little bit of a circle and continues on. We call that an enclosure. Those are all minutia ridge details that we are looking for to see if there are enough unique characteristics that correspond with those of a known impression for us to make an identification.
So why were you unable to find any fingerprints of a comparison value on the evidence that was submitted to you?
Well, there just simply was ridge structure there, but not enough for a complete comparison.
Why wasn't there enough?
I have
Well-
to object. I would think that would be speculative. He doesn't know how anything got there. He's just testing the gun.
I'll overrule the objection. He's an expert in this area. He can give his opinion to the jury.
Thank you.
Well, generally speaking, I processed a lot of weapons over my career. And for whatever reason, a latent fingerprint is a reproduction of the undersides of your fingers and the palms of your hand. And so just because you touch something doesn't necessarily mean you leave a latent fingerprint. And depending on the surface that you're leaving the fingerprint on and the individual leaving the latent print, doesn't necessarily mean you'll deposit a latent fingerprint. So a latent print is a chance impression. So depending on the individual and the surface, those are all determining factors of whether or not a usable latent print may be placed on an object.
So in your experience, 35 years, is it normal to not find latent fingerprints of comparison value on guns?
I would say over my career, I would say I find a fingerprint on a weapon and or a weapon magazine probably about 10 to 15% of the time of all the weapons that I processed.
And again, why is that?
It just has to do with, generally speaking, on weapons, especially the new ones that are out there today, and because of the manufacturing of the weapons, there just isn't enough or a lot of a smooth surface to deposit a latent fingerprint on. Also, most weapons, when they're made and constructed, they're constructed so that there is some porous surface to it so that you can hold on to the weapon better. So there's little ridges. Because if it was nice and clean and clear and slippery, you wouldn't be able to hold on to that gun. So weapons are made to not generally have areas to deposit a nice, clean, latent fingerprint on the weapon.
Okay. So in your expert opinion, are you able to tell the jury that because there was no latent fingerprints of a comparison value found on this handgun, that Arthur Woods never handled that handgun?
I would object. That's speculative.
Overrule the objection.
Again, just because you touch something doesn't necessarily mean you didn't handle it.
One second. No questions, Your Honor.
All right. Questions, Ms. Askew?
Just very briefly, how old is that weapon that's in that you have right there? Would you know?
I'm not a firearms expert, but I've seen this type of weapon, in my career a few times. How old it is, to be honest with you, I don't have any idea.
Okay. And so, but you haven't found anything, any sort of DNA or fingerprint evidence that would tie Mr. Woods to that weapon?
There was no ridge structure on the weapon of any value for any comparison purposes.
Okay, no further questions.
Anything else, Mr. Majorano?
No questions, Your Honor.
You may step down, Mr. Ginther.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Counsel, approach the bench, please. Any other witnesses, Mr. Majorano?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
All right.
Your Honor, the parties have stipulated that the defendant has been previously convicted of a felony, and at this time, the people would rest.
And Ms. Askew, is that correct? You stipulated to that fact?
Yes, Your Honor, that is correct.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to break for the evening. Caution you once again not to discuss the case amongst yourselves nor with anyone else, or listen to, read, or watch any news reports should there be any. Tomorrow morning, when you return, we'll go into closing arguments and final instructions before you begin your deliberations. So have a pleasant evening. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
All right, for the jury, please.
You can be seated. The record should reflect the jury is not present at this time. Ms. Askew, the prosecution have been rested. Do you intend to produce any witnesses?
No, Your Honor, but I would like to ask my client questions for the record.
Proceed.
Mr. Woods, you are aware that you have a right to testify today? Okay, and we've discussed that, right? And you are deciding today not to give any testimony, correct? Okay, and that's of your free will? Okay, no further questions, so.
All right. Anything? Major Honor,
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Askew.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right, we will stand in recess till tomorrow at 9 a.m. Ms. Askew, do you need to talk to your client before he goes back to the jail? I would like to see counsel in chambers. So I need to know if they can take him back now or you need to talk to him after we meet.
I think we're okay.
Okay.